As we mentioned, Arizona Congressman Raul Grijalva died today of complications from cancer treatments. He was 77. Grijalva was one of the longest-serving members of Congress in Arizona history. Here now to look back at Raul Grijalva's life and legacy is Ron Hansen, who covers national politics for the Arizona Republic and azcentral.com. Ron, good to have you here. Wanted to get you here because you'd covered Raul Grijalva for many years here as a congressperson. This is kind of a shock, but not a surprise, right?
That's right. I think that Congressman Grijalva had been in poor health for a number of years now, but it's still surprising to hear somebody that you've dealt with so many times over the years is no longer with us. It's a sad day for sure, but I think we all sort of felt that this was not going to end well.
Yeah, sitting member of Congress as well, but had missed a lot of votes here the past for quite a while now.
Yeah, he showed up on the first day of this Congress to vote on being president and then voting on House leadership, and basically had missed every vote afterward.
His roots, Tucson, Pima County, some pretty rough and tumble politics down there. What do we know about that?
Yeah, you know, Raul Grijalva is sort of his entire life was wrapped up in politics and government in one way or another. His father came as part of the Bracero program from Mexico to America. And so Raul was sort of a product in the sense of that government program that has been so picked apart over the years. He was radicalized in a sense as a disciple of the Cesar Chavez movement in the early 1970s. He was someone who got involved in local educational politics in Pima County and later with the Pima County Board of Supervisors, and then worked his way into Congress.
Worked his way into Congress, and correct me if I'm wrong, he never lost a congressional race, did he?
That's right. His district was always drawn favorably for Democrats. He won the nomination in 2002 and really never looked back. He only had two competitive-ish kind of races, and in both cases it was because of his own sort of missteps that led to that.
Well, let's talk about those real quickly here, because the first one was, I think we all remember this, the idea of calling for a boycott of Arizona back during SB 1070, right?
That's right. He had called for a boycott. That sort of stood apart from even a lot of the Arizona Democrats of the day, both at the legislature and in Washington.
Did he regret that decision later on?
He did, and he regretted it fairly early on. As early as 2011, he was talking about it ruefully, that he felt he had not listened nearly enough to his constituents on that matter. It made it a more competitive race than it otherwise would be, but he still won comfortably.
Yeah, and also I think, 4, 5, 6 years later, something, ethics investigation regarding hostile workplace and other stuff going on?
That's exactly right. He had a former staffer who had alleged a hostile workplace. Raul had acknowledged in the 1980s that he had a drinking problem. That kind of element, I think, had returned by the time of this complaint that was handled behind closed doors in about 2015. It came to public light in, I think, 2017.
And I believe he maintained, though, he did nothing wrong.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Those are the low points. Let's talk about the high points here, and especially his activism when it comes to the environment. Big proponent, big champion of water rights and these sorts of things.
Yeah, Raul Grijalva was very adamant about wanting a policy as it related to the environment that would be protective of natural resources, that was respectful of native indigenous peoples. He was someone who was an arch liberal at a time when that wasn't always where the national winds were blowing, but he didn't move off those sort of guiding lights in his career and stood as a very aggressively liberal voice in Washington for not just environmental issues, but also on science, education. He was a co-chair of the Progressive Caucus in Washington as well, really sort of putting himself out there as someone to listen to on the left.
And someone to listen to when it came to immigration issues.
Absolutely. This was, in some ways, I think, his defining issue in the minds of a lot of folks. He caught a lot of flack for the boycott, but I think his underlying point was this is something that will cause racial profiling. This is insensitive to immigrants more broadly. This affects Latinos in a way that is beyond just being able to, deal with a traffic stop. he had the entire sort of spectrum of issues in front of him.
What does Arizona in general, southern Arizona in particular, lose now that Raul Grijalva no longer represents back in Washington?
Well, first off, they lose a very senior elder in Congress. He's been there for, since the '02 elections. He is someone who is very senior in Democratic circles. That can help you with all kinds of things with appropriations. That can also create phone calls that happen more quickly. If a constituent needs help, if there's an issue that is percolating, it just tends to work more quickly if you have someone like that. So they lose that. They lose someone who's really been plugged into the community and in Washington. He really was a good liaison between the two.
And his legacy?
You know, I think his legacy is that he was an advocate for a demographic at a time when that demographic, the Latino and immigrant demographic, really was sort of changing from a presence in Arizona to a force in Arizona. He helped bridge that era, I think.
Ron Hansen, Arizona Republic, covered Raul Grijalva for many, many years. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time on this.
Happy to do it.